You think stopping contact with a man will make him forget you and move on to someone else. You've been told that silence kills attraction and that men need constant attention to stay interested. You're terrified that the moment you stop texting first, stop calling, stop being available whenever he wants you, he'll disappear forever. But here's the brutal truth that will shatter everything you believe about male psychology. When you stop contacting a man, his brain doesn't move on. It locks onto you like a heat-seeking missile, and what happens next will shock you. You've been living a lie that constant communication keeps him hooked. You think that being always available, always responsive, always there makes you valuable to him. You believe that your silence will send him running straight into another woman's arms. But here's what relationship psychology actually reveals. The human mind is wired to obsess over what it can't control. And when you remove your predictable presence from his life, you don't become forgettable. You become the mystery his brain is desperate to solve. The moment you stop giving him that reliable stream of attention, his mind shifts into a completely different mode. He starts experiencing what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. The comfortable pattern he's grown used to suddenly disappears, and his brain scrambles to make sense of the change. This isn't about playing games or manipulation. This is pure human psychology at work. And understanding these 6 specific reactions will completely transform how you approach relationships. But here's what makes this even more powerful. Each of these 6 reactions reveals something crucial about where you actually stand in his mind. Some reactions show genuine interest and potential. Others expose that you were never really a priority to begin with. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to read his behavior and respond in a way that either deepens his investment or gives you the clarity to walk away with your dignity intact. The 6th reaction is the most revealing of all, and it will change everything you thought you knew about male psychology. So stay until the end, because missing this could mean missing the most important insight about men that most women never discover. Get ready, because after today, you'll never look at silence the same way again. Reaction 1, the initial shock and disbelief. The very first thing that happens when you stop contacting a man might surprise you. It's not indifference. It's not relief, it's shock. Pure psychological shock that disrupts his entire emotional baseline. Most men don't realize how much they've come to depend on your consistent presence until it's suddenly gone. And that realization hits him like a wave he didn't see coming. Think about it from his perspective. He's gotten used to a rhythm. Your good morning texts, your random check-ins throughout the day, your evening calls or messages asking about his day. Then if he didn't always respond enthusiastically, even if he sometimes seemed distracted or took hours to reply, that steady stream of attention was feeding something deep in his psyche. It was validation. It was comfort. It was the security of knowing someone cared enough to reach out first. When that suddenly stops, his brain goes into problem-solving mode immediately. The first thought isn't usually, good, now I have more space. It's, wait, something's different, something's wrong. This is because the human mind is naturally wired to notice changes in established patterns. And when those changes involve the removal of positive attention, our psychological alarm system activates. Here's where it gets fascinating from a behavioral psychology standpoint. His brain starts running through possibilities, trying to explain the shift. Is she busy with work? Did something happen in her personal life? Is she upset about something I said or did? The uncertainty creates what psychologists call an open loop in his mind. And open loops demand closure. During this initial shock phase, you might notice some subtle changes in his behavior or paying attention. He might check his phone more frequently, almost subconsciously expecting your usual message. He might find himself opening your conversation thread and scrolling through recent messages, looking for clues about when and why the communication pattern changed. Some men even start composing messages to you during this phase, typing and deleting, unsure of what to say or whether they should reach out first. But here's the crucial part that most women miss. This shock phase is temporary. It usually lasts anywhere from a few hours to a few days, depending on how established your communication pattern was and how much emotional investment he had in the dynamic. What happens next depends entirely on his personality type, his attachment style, and most importantly, how he actually feels about you deep down. Some men will push through the shock quickly and move to action. Others will get stuck in analysis paralysis, overthinking every possible reason for your silence. And then there are those who will use this shock as an opportunity to evaluate whether they actually miss you or just miss the comfort of your attention. This first reaction is like a litmus test for everything that follows. The key insight here is that his initial shock reveals something important. If there was no shock at all, if your absence didn't create even a ripple in his emotional pond, then you know exactly where you stood in his priorities. But if that shock is there, if you can sense that disruption in his normal patterns, then you've successfully triggered the first stage of a much deeper psychological process. Reaction 2, the ego defense mechanism kicks in. After the initial shock wears off, something predictable yet fascinating happens. His ego steps in to protect him from the vulnerability he just experienced. This is where many men's behavior becomes confusing, contradictory, and sometimes even frustrating. But understanding this reaction is crucial because it reveals the internal battle between his emotions and his need to feel in control. The ego's job is simple. Protect him from feeling rejected, needy, or powerless. So when your silence continues past that initial shock phase, his mind starts constructing narratives that preserve his sense of control and self-worth. He might tell himself things like, she's probably playing games, or I don't need someone who's going to be dramatic, or maybe this is for the best anyway. This is the phase where you might see him posting more on social media, especially content that shows he's having a great time without you. He might share photos of himself out with friends at work events or engaging in hobbies. It's not necessarily that he's actually having more fun than usual. It's that his ego needs to broadcast that he's unaffected by your absence. This is psychological compensation at work. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface. While his ego is working overtime to convince him, and possibly you if you're watching, that he's perfectly fine, another part of his mind is still processing the change. He's still thinking about you, still wondering about your silence, still feeling that disruption to his routine. The ego defense is actually evidence that your absence is affecting him more than he wants to admit. Some men in this phase will go silent themselves. It becomes a psychological standoff. His ego tells him, if she's going to play this game, I can play it better. I'll show her I don't need her constant attention. This is where the dynamic can become a test of wills, with both parties waiting for the other to break first. But this standoff itself is significant. If he truly didn't care, there would be no standoff. He would simply move on. Others might take a different approach during this ego protection phase. They might reach out, but with a casual, almost dismissive tone. Something like, hey, everything okay? Or haven't heard from you in a while. The message seems simple on the surface, but it's actually loaded with ego protection. He's reaching out, but in a way that doesn't make him seem needy or overly concerned. It's his way of testing the waters while maintaining his emotional armor. The most revealing aspect of this reaction is how long it lasts and how intense it becomes. A man who has deeper feelings for you will struggle more with this phase. His ego and his emotions will be in more conflict. You might notice inconsistent behavior, mixed signals, or even some irritability that seems to come out of nowhere. That internal tension has to go somewhere. Understanding this ego defense mechanism is powerful because it helps you avoid taking his behavior personally during this phase. When he acts like he doesn't care, when he seems dismissive or distant, it's often not a reflection of his true feelings. It's his psychological protection system working exactly as it's designed to work. The stronger the ego defense, the more his emotions are actually engaged. But here's the critical insight for you. This phase is where many women make the mistake of either taking the bait and reaching out first or getting discouraged and assuming he doesn't care. Both reactions give away your power. The key is to recognize this ego defense for what it is and remain steady in your silence, allowing the process to continue naturally. Reaction 3. the curiosity and investigation phase. Once his ego has had its moment of defense, something more subtle but incredibly revealing begins to happen. His curiosity takes over. This is the phase where his mind can't help but start investigating, analyzing, and trying to piece together the mystery of your silence. And this investigation phase tells you more about his true level of interest than almost anything else he could do. During this stage, he becomes a detective of your digital footprint. He's checking your social media more frequently, not necessarily to reach out, but to gather information. He's looking for clues about your emotional state, your activities, and most importantly, whether there might be someone else in the picture. This behavior is driven by what psychologists call uncertainty reduction theory. When we're uncertain about something that matters to us, we're compelled to seek information to reduce that uncertainty. You might notice him viewing your Instagram stories more quickly than usual, sometimes even moments after you post them. He might start liking old photos or posts, seemingly random engagement that's actually strategic. These digital breadcrumbs are his way of staying on your radar while still maintaining some distance. It's investigation disguised as casual interaction. But the investigation goes deeper than just social media. He starts paying attention to mutual friends, listening for any mention of your name in conversations, or even asking indirect questions about you. How's everyone doing? Might really mean, how is she doing? He's gathering intelligence without exposing his hand, trying to understand the situation without appearing too invested. This curiosity phase often involves mental replay and analysis. He's thinking back through your recent conversations, looking for signs he might have missed. Did you seem different the last time you talked? Was there something in your tone or your responses that hinted at this change? He's essentially reverse engineering your decision to go silent, trying to understand the psychological puzzle you've created. Here's where it gets really interesting from a behavioral standpoint. The more he investigates, the more mental energy he's investing in you. Every time he checks your social media, every time he asks out you indirectly, every time he replays your conversations in his mind, he's actually increasing his emotional investment without realizing it. It's a psychological principle called the effort justification effect. The more effort we put into something, even mental effort, the more valuable it becomes to us. Some men during this phase will start noticing things about you they never paid attention to before. They'll see posts about your interests, your achievements, or your perspectives, and realize there were layers to your personality they hadn't fully appreciated. Your silence has created space for him to see you more clearly without the constant stream of interaction that might have been taken for granted. But here's the crucial insight about this investigation phase. It's not just about gathering information. It's about his mind trying to regain a sense of control and predictability. Your silence has introduced uncertainty into his mental model of the relationship, and uncertainty is psychologically uncomfortable. The investigation is his attempt to restore that sense of understanding and control. The length and intensity of this curiosity phase reveals his true level of investment. A man who moves through this quickly and then genuinely loses interest wasn't deeply engaged to begin with. But a man who gets stuck in this investigation mode, who keeps coming back to analyze and wonder, is showing you that you've captured something more significant in his psychology. The most important thing to understand about this phase is that it's working in your favor, even when it doesn't feel like it. Every moment he spends wondering about you, investigating your life, or trying to solve the puzzle of your silence is a moment he's not spending truly moving on. You've created what's called psychological presence, even in your physical absence. Reaction 4, the emotional vulnerability breakthrough. This is where things get really intense. And it's the reaction that most women never get to see because they break their silence too early. After the shock, the ego defense, and the investigation, something profound happens. His emotional walls start to crack, and for the first time, he begins to feel truly vulnerable about the situation. This breakthrough moment is where his real feelings, the ones he's been protecting and hiding, finally start to surface. The vulnerability phase is triggered when his mind can no longer rationalize your absence away. He's tried telling himself it doesn't matter. He's tried acting unaffected. He's tried gathering information to solve the mystery. But none of these strategies have restored the comfort and certainty he felt when you were consistently present in his life. And now he's forced to confront the possibility that he might actually lose you completely. This is when the mental scripts in his head start to change. Instead of "she's playing games" or "I don't need this drama," his internal dialogue shifts to questions that reveal genuine concern and emotional investment. What if she's really done with me? What if I messed up something important? What if someone else is making her happier than I ever did? These aren't ego-driven thoughts anymore. These are fears coming from a deeper, more authentic place. You might start to see this breakthrough in subtle changes in his behavior. His social media posts might become less frequent or less obviously performative. He might seem more distracted in other areas of his life, less present in conversations with friends, or less focused at work. This is because emotional vulnerability takes up psychological bandwidth. When someone is genuinely worried about losing something important, it affects their entire mental state. But here, where this reaction gets really revealing. A man in the emotional vulnerability phase will often start reaching out, but the quality of his communication changes completely. Gone are the casual hey texts or the surface level check-ins. Instead, his messages become more thoughtful, more personal, and more emotionally honest. He might send longer texts that actually express how he's feeling. He might call instead of just texting because he needs to hear your voice. This is the phase where he might start bringing up memories from your relationship that he clearly treasures. He might reference inside jokes, special moments you shared, or conversations that meant something to him. He's not just trying to get your attention anymore. He's trying to remind both of you of the connection you had, hoping to rekindle something he's now afraid of losing. The vulnerability breakthrough can also manifest as genuine apologies or acknowledgements. If there were issues between you before your silence began, this might be when he finally addresses them honestly, not with excuses or deflection, but with real ownership and accountability. "I realize I wasn't giving you the attention you deserved," or "I think I took what we had for granted," are the kinds of admissions that come from genuine emotional vulnerability. But here's the crucial thing to understand about this phase. Not every man reaches it, and not every man who reaches it stays in it. Some men will touch this vulnerability briefly and then retreat back into their ego defenses because the feeling is too uncomfortable. Others will lean into it and use it as a catalyst for real change and growth. The men who push through this vulnerability and come out the other side are often the ones worth considering if you're looking for something real and lasting, because vulnerability requires emotional maturity. It requires the ability to face uncertainty, discomfort, and the possibility of rejection. These are the qualities that make for healthy, authentic relationships. The key insight for you during this phase is to recognize genuine vulnerability when you see it and respond accordingly. This doesn't mean you have to immediately welcome him back into your life, but it does mean you can engage from a place of honesty rather than strategy. If his vulnerability seems authentic and consistent with the kind of relationship you want, this might be the opening for a real conversation about moving forward. Reaction 5. The action and pursuit intensification. After vulnerability opens his emotional floodgates, many men enter what might be the most intense phase of all, heightened action and pursuit. This is when his behavior shifts from passive wondering to active effort. He's no longer just thinking about you or casually reaching out. He's actively trying to win you back. And the level of effort he puts in during this phase reveals everything about how he truly values what you had together. This intensification happens because vulnerability has shown him what losing you would actually mean. It's no longer theoretical. The possibility of you being completely out of his life has become real and immediate. And that realization triggers his pursuit instincts at full force. Suddenly, he's willing to do things he wasn't willing to do when he felt secure in your attention. You'll see this in the frequency and quality of his attempts to reconnect. He might start calling instead of just texting. He might send voice messages so you can hear the sincerity in his tone. He might write longer, more thoughtful messages that show he's really considering what went wrong and what he wants to change. This isn't the casual "how are you" anymore. This is genuine courtship behavior. But the pursuit intensification goes beyond just communication. He might start showing up in places where he knows you'll be, not in a creepy or stalking way, but in a "I need to see you and talk to you" way. He might reach out to mutual friends, not to gather information this time, but to express genuine concern about your well-being and his desire to make things right. This